In the final, chaotic days of World War II, as the Third Reich was literally crumbling to dust, one of its most powerful and sinister figures, Adolf Hitler's personal secretary, just walked out of the Führer bunker and vanished. And for the next 30 years, the world would be hunting for a ghost.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The disappearance of Martin Bormann kicked off one of the biggest manhunts in history. It sparked decades of rumors, wild conspiracy theories, and as you'll see, a truly bizarre forensic investigation. So yeah, let's unpack this incredible, decades-long mystery.
So first off, who exactly was this guy? Martin Bormann wasn't some general on the front lines. No, he was a master bureaucrat, a totally ruthless political operator who basically became Hitler's shadow. If you wanted to see Hitler, you had to go through Bormann, and that gatekeeper role, it gave him almost unimaginable power.
Bormann's influence was, well, it was quiet, but it was absolute. As Hitler's right-hand man, he managed all the finances, he controlled appointments, and he was a central figure in carrying out the final solution, always making sure Hitler's name was kept away from any direct orders. So picture the scene. It's May 1st, 1945. Hitler is dead. The Red Army is swarming Berlin. Bormann gets together with a small group to try and break out of the bunker. They disappear into the smoke and total chaos of the city, and then nothing. Just gone. One of the most wanted men on the entire planet had just vanished. What came next was this massive, international manhunt on an absolutely epic scale. Allied intelligence, Nazi hunters, journalists, everyone was chasing shadows and whispers, trying to figure out how he could have possibly just disappeared. And the search was relentless. I mean, sightings were reported everywhere. People thought they saw him as a monk in Italy, a farmer in Germany, and the most persistent rumor, a powerful figure organizing fugitive Nazis down in South America. Was he dead in a ditch in Berlin, or was he pulling the strings from some secret compound in Paraguay? Now, what's really fascinating here is how this whole mystery boiled down to two main theories. On one side, you had an eyewitness. The leader of the Hitler Youth, a guy named Arthur Axmann, was in that breakout group, and he swore he saw Bormann's dead body near a railway station. But on the other side, the idea that he escaped through a secret network, well, that was just too compelling for a lot of people to let go of. And that escape theory has had some serious staying power. Even today, you can see people online, like this Reddit user, dissecting all the evidence, debating whether the official story really adds up. The whole idea of Bormann secretly orchestrating a Fourth Reich from afar, it became a modern myth. So for almost 30 years, that's pretty much where things stood, a cold case just full of speculation. Then, in 1972, a completely random construction project in West Berlin stumbled onto something that was about to change everything. Right, so the case goes cold for decades. There was a tip back in the 60s that led to a dig, but they found absolutely nothing. But then, in 72, just a stone's throw from that first failed dig, workers hit bone. Suddenly, the case was red hot, and within a year, the German government was ready to close the book on Martin Bormann for good. So at the site, they found two skeletons. One was pretty easy to identify. It was Ludwig Stumpfegger, Hitler's personal doctor who fled with Bormann. They knew it was him because his military pass was still there with the remains. And the other, shorter skeleton, lying right beside him, well, that seemed to be the missing piece of the puzzle. And at first, the evidence looked overwhelming. The height was right. There was damage to the collarbone that perfectly matched a known injury Bormann got in a riding accident. Hitler's dentist remembered Bormann's teeth, and it was a near-perfect match. And the clincher, tiny glass fragments in the jaw, the classic sign of someone crushing a cyanide capsule. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast, because as forensic scientists started looking closer at that skeleton, a bunch of, let's call them, worrying anomalies began to pop up. Anomalies that would keep those conspiracy theories burning for another 25 years. So this is the crucial point. The very evidence that seemed to close the case was also the evidence that blew it wide open again. So what were these weird details that kept famous Nazi hunters like Simon Wiesenthal convinced it was all just an elaborate hoax? Okay, so the first big red flag was in the mouth. While the dental work generally matched the records, some of it was just too good. The fillings and crowns were made using techniques that simply did not exist in 1945. This suggested the dental work had to have been done after the war. And then there was the dirt. The skeletons weren't found in Berlin's typical pale soil. No, they were covered in this really distinct red clay. And when soil experts checked it out, they confirmed this clay wasn't from anywhere near Berlin, which suggested the body had been buried somewhere else and then moved. This all led one of the examining pathologists to a pretty startling theory that Bormann had actually escaped, probably to Paraguay, died there years later, and then his remains were smuggled back to Berlin and planted just to end the manhunt once and for all.
So the mystery just got deeper. Was the skeleton real or was it a plant? For decades, the debate just raged on. But the final answer wasn't going to come from an old archive or a new witness. It was going to come from a laboratory.
The year is 1998. The Cold War is long over, Germany is reunified, and a new forensic technology has become the absolute gold standard for identification: DNA analysis. The German government decided to use it to settle the Bormann question once and for all.
So how were they going to do this? They used something called mitochondrial DNA. See, unlike regular DNA, which you get from both parents, mtDNA is passed down almost perfectly from a mother to her children. This makes it an incredibly powerful tool for confirming who someone is by matching it to any living relative on their mother's side.
And that is exactly what they did. Scientists took a sample from the skull they found back in '72 and compared its mitochondrial DNA to a sample from an elderly living relative on Bormann's mother's side. And the results? It was a perfect match. Beyond any statistical doubt, the skeleton was Martin Bormann. He really had died in Berlin back in 1945 after all.
So yeah, the mysteries of the strange red clay and the advanced dental work are still intriguing historical footnotes, but the genetic evidence is conclusive. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As technology gets better and better, what other great historical mysteries, long buried in rumor and speculation, are just waiting for the right scientific tool to finally bring them into the light?